The silence that screams. Captain Elena Vasquez was halfway through her morning coffee when the universe decided to stop making sense. The emergency klaxon aboard the UES Defiance cut through the peaceful hum of deep space like a blade through silk. She set down her mug, watching the dark liquid ripple with each pulse of the alarm, and knew that whatever was coming would change everything. Bridge to Captain came the voice of her communications officer, Lieutenant Sarah Chen. We're receiving a priority transmission from Kepler Mining Station. They're reporting something impossible. Elena strode onto the bridge, her boots clicking against the metal deck plates. The Defiance was humanity's newest deep space explorer, built for the unknown, crewed by volunteers who thrived on the impossible. At 38, Elena had seen her share of the impossible, but Chen's pale face suggested this was different. Put it through, Elena ordered, settling into her command chair. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the weathered face of Station Commander Marcus Webb. Behind him, the mining station's command center buzzed with frantic activity. Webb's usually steady voice carried an edge of panic that made Elena's skin crawl. Captain Vasquez, thank God you're in range. We've got a situation out here that defies explanation. The Zephyrian Empire's entire Third Fleet. They're gone. Elena felt her stomach drop. The Zephyrians weren't humanity's allies, but they weren't enemies either. They were simply there, a massive galactic empire spanning dozens of star systems, their crystalline ships patrolling the outer rim territories with methodical precision. The Third Fleet alone contained over 3,000 vessels, including their flagship dreadnoughts that could crack planets. Gone how? Elena asked, though part of her already dreaded the answer. Webb's image flickered as interference crawled across the transmission. Not destroyed, Captain. Gone. They were conducting their regular patrol sweep through the Veil Nebula yesterday. Standard formation. Full communications array active. Then, at 14:32 station time, every single signal just stopped. Chief Science Officer Dr. James Liu leaned forward in his chair. Complete communications failure across an entire fleet. That's practically impossible. The Zephyrians have redundant systems built into redundant systems. Webb nodded grimly. That's what we thought too. So we sent out probe drones to investigate. What they found. He paused, running a hand through his graying hair. Captain, the ships are still there. All of them. Perfect formation, not a scratch on their hulls. But they're completely dead. No power signatures, no life signs, no energy readings of any kind. Elena exchanged glances with her tactical officer, Commander Jake Morrison. Jake had fought the Zephyrians during the border skirmishes 5 years ago. He knew their capabilities better than anyone aboard. That's not possible, Jake muttered. Zephyrian ships are powered by crystalline matrices that can't just turn off. Even if every crew member died simultaneously, the ships would still maintain basic functions for months. Commander Morrison is correct, Webb continued, as if he'd heard Jake's comment. But our probes detected something else. Massive gravitational distortions throughout the area. Space-time itself appears to be twisted, bent in ways that shouldn't be possible. Elena stood up, her mind racing. Send us all your data, Commander. We're changing course to investigate. Captain, I have to advise against that. Whatever happened to the Zephyrians is still out there, Elena finished, which is exactly why we need to understand it. If something can make an entire star fleet simply stop existing, Earth needs to know about it. Webb's expression softened slightly. I understand, Captain. Just be careful. Whatever did this, it's beyond anything we've encountered before. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in heavy silence. Elena looked around at her crew, seeing her own mixture of fear and determination reflected in their faces. These were the people who had volunteered for humanity's furthest-reaching missions, who had signed up to face the unknown depths of space. Dr. Liu, I want a full analysis of Commander Webb's data the moment it comes through. Chen, send a message to Earth Command. Priority Alpha Classification. Morrison, plot a course for the Vale Nebula. Maximum sustainable speed. Aye, Captain, came the chorus of responses. As the Defiance altered course, Alina found herself staring out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 3,000 ships floated in the darkness, their crews simply gone. Not dead, not destroyed, just absent. The thought sent a chill down her spine that had nothing to do with the ship's recycled air. 18 hours later, they reached the edge of the Vale Nebula. The nebula itself was a thing of beauty, swirling clouds of cosmic dust and gas painted in shades of purple and gold by distant starlight. But as they drew closer to the coordinates Webb had provided, that beauty took on a sinister quality. Captain, Dr. Liu called from his station. I'm detecting severe spatial distortions ahead. It's like, imagine if someone took a photograph and crumpled it up, then tried to smooth it out again. Space itself has been wrinkled. Elena nodded. Can we navigate through it safely? I believe so, but we'll need to reduce speed significantly. The gravitational shears could tear us apart if we're not careful. The next few hours passed in tense silence as they carefully maneuvered through the distorted space. Chen monitored communications frequencies, hoping to pick up any signals from the Zephyrian fleet. Morrison kept weapon systems on standby, though none of them could imagine what they might need to shoot at. Then, finally, they saw them. The Zephyrian Third Fleet hung in space like a museum display. Perfect formation, perfect alignment, each ship exactly where it should be according to their tactical doctrine. The massive dreadnoughts at the center, surrounded by cruisers and destroyers in concentric circles, with scout ships positioned at regular intervals along the perimeter. But they were dark, completely, utterly dark. My God, whispered Morrison. It's like they just switched off. Elena ordered the Defiance to approach slowly, every sensor array active. As they drew closer, the true scope of the mystery became apparent. The Zephyrian ships showed no signs of battle damage, no evidence of internal explosions or system failures. They simply hung there like giant sculptures, beautiful and lifeless. Dr. Liu, what are your readings? Incredible, Captain. The ships are structurally intact, but I'm detecting zero electromagnetic activity. No power generation, no computer systems, no life support. It's as if every electron in their entire fleet simply stopped moving. Chen turned from her station, her face pale. Captain, I'm not picking up any distress beacons, no emergency broadcasts, no automated systems. The silence is complete. Elena made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. Morrison, take us closer to the flagship. We need to board one of those ships and find out what happened. Captain, with respect, that might not be wise. Whatever did this is information we desperately need. Elena's voice was firm. If humanity is going to face this threat, we need to understand it. They approached the Zephyrian flagship, a massive crystalline construct that normally blazed with inner light. Now it hung like a dead jewel against the starfield. The Defiance's docking systems engaged with the larger ship's airlocks, and Elena led a small team aboard. The interior of the Zephyrian ship was a tomb. Emergency lighting that should have activated the moment their systems failed remained dark. The crystalline corridors, usually filled with the harmonious humming of Zephyrian technology, were silent as death itself. They found the first crew member in the main corridor, a Zephyrian officer, tall and graceful, with skin that shifted through subtle color patterns. Or at least, it should have. The being stood perfectly upright, eyes open but completely motionless. Not dead, but not alive either. Frozen in a moment that would never end. Vital signs? Elena asked Dr. Liu, who was scanning the figure with his medical tricorder. That's just it, Captain. There are no vital signs, but there's also no decay, no cellular breakdown. It's as if biological time simply stopped for this individual. They found the bridge crew in similar states. The ship's captain stood at the central command console, one hand reaching toward a control that would never be touched. The navigator sat in perfect posture, eyes focused on star charts that would never be updated, all of them caught in the last moment of their existence, preserved in an eternal instant. "Captain," Chen's voice crackled through the comm system from the Defiance. "You need to get back here. Now." Elena felt her blood turn to ice. "What is it, Lieutenant?" "Long-range sensors are detecting something approaching our position. I don't know how to describe it. It's not a ship, not an energy signature. It's like space itself is moving toward us." Elena and her team rushed back to the Defiance, leaving the Zephyrian tomb behind. On the bridge, the main screen showed an impossible sight. The star field ahead of them was rippling, like water disturbed by a stone. Reality itself seemed to be flowing toward their position. "How fast is it moving?" Elena asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "That's the problem, Captain," Chen replied. "It's not moving through space. It is space. The distortion is reality itself, changing as it comes." Elena made the hardest decision of her career. "All hands, prepare for emergency jump to FTL. We're leaving. Now." As the Defiance engaged its faster-than-light drive and flooded the Veil Nebula, Elena watched the approaching distortion on the rear sensors. For just a moment, she thought she saw something within the rippling space. Not a shape exactly, but a presence. Something vast and ancient and utterly alien, moving through dimensions that human minds couldn't fully comprehend. Whatever had taken the Zephyrian fleet wasn't a weapon or an enemy they could fight. It was something far more terrifying. A force of nature that operated by rules no living being understood. And now it knew that humanity existed. The journey back to Earth took 3 days. 3 days of Elena staring at the data logs, trying to make sense of what they'd witnessed. The Zephyrians hadn't been killed or captured. They had been edited out of existence, removed from the flow of time itself, while their ships remained as monuments to their absence. When they finally reached Earth, Elena transmitted her report to the highest levels of human government and military command. The response was swift and decisive. Humanity would not go gently into that good night. If something out there was erasing civilizations, then Earth would find a way to survive. But as Elena stood in her quarters, looking out at the blue marble of humanity's homeworld, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were already too late. Somewhere in the darkness between the stars, reality itself was hungry, and it had turned its ancient attention toward Earth. When reality breaks, Admiral Sarah Chen stood before the emergency session of the United Earth Council, her hands clasped behind her back as she delivered humanity's death sentence. The holographic displays around the circular chamber showed the same impossible data that had been keeping the world's brightest minds awake for the past week. The entity that destroyed the Zephyrian fleet has been designated as a Class Omega threat, Chen announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the underground bunker that now served as humanity's seat of government. "Our analysis indicates it's not a weapon, not a species, and not even a force as we understand physics. It's what our xenobiologists are calling a reality cleanser." President Martinez leaned forward in her chair, the weight of 8 billion lives visible in the lines around her eyes. "Explain that term, Admiral." Chen activated the holographic display at the center of the chamber. The image showed a 3-dimensional map of known space, with red zones marking areas where civilizations had mysteriously vanished over the past millennium. The pattern was unmistakable once you knew what to look for. Every advanced civilization in this galaxy follows a predictable pattern of development, Chen continued. They discover fire, develop agriculture, split the atom, achieve spaceflight, and eventually begin manipulating the fundamental forces of reality itself. Quantum computers, artificial gravity, faster than light travel, dimensional manipulation. We call this the ascension threshold. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now promoted to admiral after her discovery in the Veil Nebula, stood to address the council. Her 3-day voyage to investigate the Zephyrian fleet had turned into humanity's most important intelligence mission. The data she'd collected was both their salvation and their doom. The entity appears to be a kind of universal immune system, Alina explained, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was sharing. When a civilization crosses the ascension threshold, when they begin to significantly impact the fabric of space-time itself, this entity takes notice. It doesn't see advanced civilizations as life forms to be preserved. It sees them as infections to be cleansed. The chamber fell silent except for the soft humming of the life support systems. Finally, the representative from the African Union spoke up. "How long do we have?" Alina's expression darkened. "Based on the pattern of distortions we detected and cross-referencing with our own technological development timeline, we estimate the entity will reach Earth's solar system within 6 months." The next few weeks were humanity's finest and darkest hours simultaneously. Every resource on Earth was mobilized toward a single goal: survival. The world's greatest military minds developed strategies for fighting an enemy that existed partially outside normal spacetime. Scientists worked around the clock to understand the entity's nature and find potential weaknesses. Engineers designed weapons that could theoretically affect something that wasn't entirely real. But Alina knew they were approaching the problem wrong. Late one night in her temporary office at the Cheyenne Mountain Complex, she was reviewing the Zephyrian data logs when she noticed something everyone else had missed. In the final moments before the fleet's disappearance, their quantum computers had been running massive calculations. Not weapon targeting or shield configurations, but something else entirely. Dr. Liu, she called to her former science officer, who had been reassigned to the emergency research team. "Come look at this." James Liu hurried over, his eyes bloodshot from weeks of sleepless work. Alina showed him the data stream from the Zephyrian flagship's final moments. They weren't trying to fight it, Liu realized, his voice filled with awe and horror. They were trying to hide from it. Alina nodded grimly. The entity doesn't hunt by sight or heat or electromagnetic signatures. It detects civilizations by their quantum footprint, the way their technology disturbs the underlying structure of reality itself. So the Zephyrians were trying to mask their quantum signature when they were caught, Liu concluded. But why didn't it work? Alina pulled up another data stream, this one showing the mathematical progression of Zephyrian technology. Because they were too rigid in their thinking. Look at their approach to quantum masking. Perfect mathematical harmony, flawless crystalline matrices, absolute order. It's beautiful, but it's still fundamentally artificial. The entity could still detect the pattern. Liu stared at the data for several long moments. "You're suggesting we need a different approach." "I'm suggesting we need the most human approach possible," Alina replied. "Chaos." The idea was insane, which made it perfectly human. Instead of trying to create perfect quantum camouflage like the Zephyrians, Alina proposed something that had never been attempted in the history of galactic civilization: controlled quantum chaos. The plan required every quantum computer on Earth to be networked together into a single massive system. Then, instead of running ordered calculations, they would generate pure randomness. Not the pseudo-randomness of computer algorithms, but true quantum randomness born from the fundamental uncertainty of reality itself. Dr. Sarah Kim, Earth's leading quantum physicist, stood before the assembled team in the Mountain Facility's main laboratory. "The theory is sound, but the risks are enormous. If we miscalculate, we could collapse Earth's local spacetime into a black hole. We could accidentally tear a hole in reality itself." Alina stepped forward. "And if we don't try, humanity ceases to exist in 6 months. I'd rather die attempting the impossible than wait for extinction." The next 3 months were a marathon of human ingenuity and cooperation unlike anything in the species' history. Every nation on Earth contributed resources. Quantum computers from universities, corporations, and government facilities were linked together through a network of fiber optic cables and quantum entanglement nodes. The system they built was unlike anything that had ever existed: a planet-wide quantum noise generator capable of creating true randomness on a cosmic scale. They called it Project Babel, after the ancient tower that had confused the languages of humanity. But this confusion was intentional, designed to hide humanity's quantum signature in a cloud of pure, chaotic noise. As the project neared completion, long-range sensors detected the entity's approach. Space telescopes showed the same impossible distortions Alina had witnessed in the Veil Nebula, but on a much larger scale. The entity was moving through the outer solar system, leaving Neptune's orbit subtly altered and Jupiter's moons mysteriously silent. "It's here," Chen announced during the final emergency briefing. "All outer system monitoring stations have gone dark. Mars Colony's last transmission was 12 hours ago." Elena stood at the control console for Project Babel, her finger hovering over the activation switch. Around her, the greatest minds of humanity held their breath. Either they were about to save their species, or they were about to destroy their planet. "Initiating quantum chaos field," Elena announced, and pressed the switch. The effect was immediate and undetectable to human senses, but every quantum sensor on Earth registered the change. Reality around the planet began to fluctuate in tiny random ways. Space-time itself became noisy, filled with quantum static that made it impossible to detect any underlying pattern or purpose. For 48 hours, they waited. Earth's quantum signature was hidden in a cloud of cosmic noise, but there was no way to know if the entity would be fooled. They couldn't send probes to investigate without risking detection, couldn't use active sensors without creating the very patterns they were trying to hide. Then, on the third day, the distortions around Mars began to recede. Dr. Liu was monitoring the gravitational wave detectors when he noticed the first signs. "Elena, come look at this. The entity, it's moving away." Elena rushed to his station, her heart pounding. The data showed the impossible distortions withdrawing from the inner solar system, moving back toward the outer planets, then beyond. "It's leaving," she whispered, hardly daring to believe it. Over the following weeks, long-range sensors confirmed what seemed impossible. The entity had withdrawn from Sol system entirely, moving back into deep space. The quantum chaos field had worked. Humanity's messy, chaotic, unpredictable approach to quantum mechanics had succeeded where the Zephyrians' perfect crystalline order had failed. But the victory came with a price. Earth would have to maintain the chaos field indefinitely, keeping their quantum signature hidden behind a wall of cosmic noise. It meant limitations on certain types of advanced technology, careful monitoring of every quantum experiment, and the constant vigilance of a species that had learned to hide in plain sight. 6 months later, Elena stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt orbital station above Earth, watching the blue marble of humanity's home turn slowly beneath her feet. The chaos field generators hummed softly in the background, their quantum noise invisible but ever-present. "Admiral," came a voice from behind her. She turned to see Dr. Liu approaching with a data pad in his hands. "What is it, James?" "We've received a transmission. It's weak, heavily encrypted, but it's definitely from another species. They're asking if we've developed a method for avoiding the silent cleanser." Helena smiled for the first time in months. "How many others are out there, do you think? How many civilizations have learned to hide in the chaos?" Liu shrugged. "Could be dozens, could be hundreds. Species that discovered the same truth we did. Sometimes the best way to survive is to make yourself invisible." Elena nodded, looking back out at the stars. Somewhere out there, other civilizations were learning to hide their quantum signatures, masking their presence behind walls of controlled chaos. And perhaps someday, when enough species had learned to be silent, they could work together to understand the entity that hunted them. But for now, humanity was safe in their bubble of quantum noise, hidden from the eyes of something vast and ancient and utterly alien. They had learned the most important lesson in the galaxy. Sometimes, the greatest strength was knowing when not to be strong, when to be chaotic instead of ordered, when to whisper instead of shout. Humanity had always been good at chaos. Now that chaos had saved them all. In the depths of space, far beyond the reach of human sensors, other voices began to whisper in the cosmic dark. Species that had survived by learning to hide, civilizations that had discovered the art of quantum silence. And slowly, carefully, they began to reach out to each other, building a network of hidden worlds united by their shared knowledge of how to remain invisible. The entity still moved through the galaxy, still cleansed civilizations that shone too brightly in the quantum spectrum. But now there were shadows where advanced species learned to thrive in darkness, teaching newcomers the art of survival through controlled chaos. Earth had become the newest member of the Hidden Nations, and Elena Vasquez had become humanity's first ambassador to a galactic community that existed in the spaces between reality's attention. It wasn't the future anyone had imagined, but it was a future where humanity would survive to imagine others. And in the end, that was enough.